Welcome to Behind the Investigation. I'm Chief Investigator Brendan Keefe with Atlanta News First and Atlanta News First Plus, and I'm joined by your great consumer investigator, Harry Samler from Better Call Harry. What a coincidence that that's what it's called, because it's named after you, Harry, isn't it?
Isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice?
Just a coincidence, Brendan.
Well, what I like about Better Call Harry is, you actually do go and advocate on behalf of people who really have nowhere else to turn. And the story we're talking about today is someone who was essentially going up against the IRS. And, I've received that letter in the mail. Hey, you owe taxes,
right.
Or, you're being audited. And, your heart stops because the IRS, it's something about the logo and for official use only. It certainly gets your attention. Set up this story for us, then we'll take a look and we'll talk about it after the story.
So it was interesting in that she thought that she owed the IRS a lot of money. And at the time she did. But she didn't know how to pay it off. She didn't know how to go online and that you can go to the IRS website and set up a payment plan.
You can do this yourself.
There are things that you can do that you don't have to get a tax relief company involved. She didn't owe, it's not like she owed $50,000 to the government. She owed, at the time, it was a few grand. Not the end of the world. But, do you go to a tax debt relief company to help resolve that issue? And she didn't have to. And a lot of people just don't understand. There is good information that you can find on the IRS website that will point you in the right direction.
So this is different than an accountant or a CPA or even a tax preparer. This is a company that deals just with people who owe money to the IRS, and they're looking for some advocate to help them through this scary process, right?
Correct. You call them, they take your case, they want a fee. Here's my argument. Why don't you just take that fee and put it towards the tax debt? And then supposedly they're supposed to try and negotiate a settlement for you.
Let's take a look at this
Sure.
story and we'll talk about it afterwards.
I remember you. You're the one who made my dreams come true.
Gayleen Knox sings like a professional. She performs the Johnny Mercer classics like I Remember You, but when it comes to her taxes, she's an amateur. She thinks she owes the IRS and the state around $4,000. $4,000 is not the end of the world.
For me, it is.
So, Knox decided to call one of those tax relief companies Finish Line Tax Solutions out of Houston, Texas.
The collection process can be brutal. You need Finish Line Tax Solutions.
She says a Finish Line rep said for $600, they'd take her case, do a consultation, and negotiate with the IRS. Stop right there. $600?
I gave him my credit card number. It came out just like that.
If she'd paid the IRS $600 instead of Finish Line, she would have cut down her tax bill by 15%. Knox says she waited a month and then called the IRS.
I called IRS to see if they'd contacted them on my behalf. They said, no one has contacted us on your behalf. So I said, whoa. After about a month and a half, 2 months, I called Finish Line and said, I want a refund. And they said, we don't give refunds, and hung up on me.
Knox decided to contact Atlanta News First.
She's a senior citizen. She doesn't really understand how this works.
A Finish Line attorney says when Knox contacted the company in May of 2021, she did owe the IRS. But Finish Line stopped its investigation when she asked for the refund. He says they didn't do anything wrong, but as a goodwill gesture, it will issue a $600 credit. And guess what? We got online and discovered that she no longer owes the IRS. It owes her. Last year's refund covers the old tax bill, and on top of that, she's getting $1,100.
I'll tell them I remember.
That is cause for celebration.
I remember you.
Bravo.
And I just want to reiterate, Brendan, that the tax relief company, when they contacted us and they sent us all this information and they started doing their own background, they stand behind what the work that they say they did. We didn't actually see it, but look, they say they did the work, but because of a miscommunication or maybe a misunderstanding, they were nice enough to refund the $600.
But it really started with her calling the IRS and saying, hey, I hired this company. Have they reached out to you yet? She didn't ask for the refund until after that, according to her, right?
She asked for the refund, the following year. I mean, this is all kind of confusing if you don't really know how to do your taxes. And she kind of fell into that category. I mean, she was doing everything old school on a piece of paper, writing it out by hand, and she figured this is what I owe. She didn't actually know. It wasn't until, Brendan, we got her in that portal, which everyone should do, sign up for an account with the IRS, and went in there and checked the status of what she owes versus a refund. And it's like, oh, wait a second. They sent you an $1,100 check. You don't owe them $3,000.
Right. I mean, technically, she paid them back through her refund, but
Right.
what a relief to go from owing $4,000 to getting $1,100 back. No wonder she was singing, and no wonder Atlanta News First Investigates photographer Dmitry Litovsky was dancing along with her. I mean, this is pretty exciting news. But in the case of these challenges, I mean, I'll be honest with you. And I love the way you set it up this way, because you said she's essentially a professional singer, but an amateur when it comes to taxes. Unless you have training in this, it's frightening. And, the idea of going up against the IRS alone is scary, which is a really big motivational factor in hiring one of these services. But what you're telling me is with a few Google searches and using, this portal, I can manage this myself, and you're actually recommending that?
Yeah, I mean, they can set you up on a payment plan. I mean, you're going to pay the IRS interest, which you really don't want to do. But if you have to, I believe, and I'll go and double check this, under $50,000, you can set up a plan. They're not going to come to your door, and that I know. I've spoken with the media spokesperson with the IRS. They're not going to do that.
And they don't throw people in prison unless there's, some sort of, I mean, I'll be honest with you, like this is what I was going to say a minute ago. When I owed the IRS some money way back when, it was a mistake I had made, I was terrified that, am I going to go to jail for this? But really, they just wanted their money.
Yeah, and if you pay something, it even says it on the IRS website that even if you can't afford to pay the entire bill, give them $50. Show that you're making payments. And yeah, you are going to get hit with penalties, but it's better than doing nothing. Doing nothing is not the answer.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. Is there some sort of, is there any service you would hire to do this? Or are you saying that I'm better off learning how to do this myself?
I would say if you have simple taxes, a simple return, then, doing it online in one of these online companies like TurboTax or not Morgan Stanley, but any of the service providers that offer it should probably be fine. If you have something complicated that you're dealing with and you're going to owe a lot of money, I'm going to say CPA, and I'm going to say if you have property in the Caymans, that's when you want to switch to a tax attorney. But a tax attorney is
professional advice. Yeah.
Right. A tax attorney is never a bad idea. In fact, I talked to one last week on a separate issue, and when I brought the story up to the tax attorney, he's like, "Yeah, we get tons of people in here who went to tax debt relief companies, and now they owe even more, and then they come to us, and then we work it out because you're paying them on an hourly basis versus a fee." I think that's your best bet. CPA, tax attorney, if it's getting complicated.
And I know a lot of your Better Call Harry stories start with whenever you pay someone up front before you receive any service, that always inverts the leverage to where they're holding all the cards. Because once you pay them and you're asking for a refund when you don't get anything, you're better off in a lot of services for, okay, go fix this for me and I'll give you a cut of it, or go fix this for me and then I'll pay you the fee, or paying a portion of the fee up front and not all of it. So at least there's some leverage when you do have a dispute. And I'm not just talking about, this kind of tax relief service. I'm talking about any service, somebody building a deck for you. Boy, you've drilled that into me. Never pay the whole amount up front.
Yeah, no, you can apply this to almost anything, what amount you should pay up front for a service. Listen, if it was up to me, no one would ever pay anything until the job is done, but that's not how things work.
Right. And sometimes a contractor has to buy materials in advance, and there's...
If you're switching over into something like that, into a service like that, but even with the tax service, I don't pay my CPA until he's done.
Yeah.
every year. I know the bill's coming, and he knows he's going to get paid. So, but he doesn't charge me till he's done.
Right, right, absolutely. Anything else you want to add? Any other takeaways, Harry?
You know, these debt relief companies, I don't want to say stay away from them. I know other people will tell you to, but I think you're better off trying to resolve this on your own or through a CPA.
Or through a tax attorney.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really good advice. As always, great to have you here, Harry. Better call Harry. And you can also hear Behind the Investigation on our podcast. The audio of this is also a podcast where you don't have to look at my face, which is very entertaining to listen to wherever you get your podcasts. For now, I'm Brendan Keefe with Harry Samler with Behind the Investigation on Atlanta News First Plus.